Hey, what's up everyone? Now we will be talking about GI bleeding. As you can see in this picture, you will see GI bleeding could be upper or lower. Upper could be esophageal varices, medullary steer, gastric ulcer, hemorrhagic gastritis, duodenal ulcer, okay? Could be lower GI bleed. Lower GI bleed could be small intestinal bleeding, such as ischemic bowel disease, intussusception, Merkel diverticulum. Lower intestinal bleeding could be due to angiodysplasia, colonic carcinoma, rectosigmoid carcinoma, hemorrhoid, diverticulosis, inflammatory bowel diseases. So the one in the upper GI bleed, we call it hematemesis, and the one in the lower GI bleed, we call it hematochezia. Okay? So usually upper GI bleeding causes a drop in hemoglobin and need orthostatic, and usually B1 over creatinine more than 35. Okay? So hematochezia can be upper GI bleed, but usually associated with hemodynamic instability. But lower GI bleed is not so much hemodynamic instability, probably because upper GI has more blood supply than the lower, that's why. So that's the difference. So hematemesis in the upper, hematochezia could be upper or lower. Like lower GI bleed could be upper or lower. Like blood in the stool, it could be from the upper part, could be from the lower part. Differentiate upper from lower based on hemodynamic instability. If it's unstable, upper; stable, most likely lower. It could be most likely. Okay, so regardless, this is the cause. How do we manage right now? That's what we wanna really talk about and focus on. So for anyone who presented with acute GI bleeding, what are the actions that we have to do? We gotta do, number one, we gotta do 2 large bore IV. That's the first thing we want to do. After that, what do we want to do? We want to give IV fluid, 2 liters. 2 liters. Lactated ringer equal normal saline, so it's the same usually. After that, we do PPI, 80 milligram. Okay, IV, and then you can do 40 milligram BID. After that, what do we want to do? We want to do type plus cross, and then transfuse if it's less than 7. If less than 7. So you gotta monitor the change in hemoglobin over the change in time. Change in hemoglobin. So let's do it. Hemoglobin change divided by time. So how much hemoglobin are we losing by time? After that, what do? Call GI. Interesting. So what do we want to do after we call GI? What are they gonna do? So after you call GI, they're gonna do a GI EGD. Okay. After they do EGD, after they do EGD, and which is endoscopy, if it's positive, then what do you think is the source? Source upper GI bleeding. Okay, so they will treat it. You just clip it, coil it, or fix it right there and then. There. What if it's negative? If it's negative, then it's most likely lower GI bleed. So lower GI bleed, you gotta monitor change in hemoglobin. If hemoglobin change, okay. If it need transfusion, transfuse, okay. After you transfuse, if they are stable or bleeding stop, then you do colonoscopy. Simple and easy. But what if after transfusion, you still find still they are losing, bleeding continues? Okay, so what are you gonna do? So what are you going to do after that? You basically, the radiologist, they will do arteriogram and embolize. They're gonna basically go to the vessel that's causing the problem and block it right there and then. So that's basically the GI bleed management. Okay, what if there was a cirrhosis? What do we do if there's a cirrhosis? Let's see. If there is cirrhosis, you add octreotide. Like if there's caused by varicose bleeding, you add octreotide, and you can add ceftriaxone. Okay. The other thing that we want to focus on, who goes to the ICU? ICU usually if someone have shock, orthostatic positive, or if somebody need rapid transfusions, then you do 3 packed red blood cells plus the fresh frozen plasma, 1 fresh frozen plasma, plus 1 platelet transfusion. So if they need rapid transfusion, you also look at the ICU. Now, what are the non-reassuring signs too? The non-reassuring signs. What are the non-reassuring signs? Could usually be UN over creatinine more than 35. That's non-reassuring. Decrease in hemoglobin less than 10. That's non-reassuring sign of GI bleeding. And abnormal vital signs. So that's basically a GI bleed summary. So you gotta look at, initially you do 2 large bore IV, and then you give the IV fluid. After that you do PPI, 80 milligram IV and then 40 PID, and then type and cross, transfuse of heat less than 7, and then you call GI. GI, they will take it from there usually. If they usually do in EGD, if it's positive, then upper GI they will treat it. If it's negative, and there's drop in hemoglobin, they will transfuse. If bleeding stop, colonoscopy. If bleeding continues, arteriogram and embolize. ICU usually, if somebody has shock, orthostatics, or need rapid transfusion, 3 red blood cell, 1 fresh packed red blood cell, 3, 1 fresh frozen plasma, 1 platelet, or non-reassuring vital signs beyond creatinine more than 35, decrease in hemoglobin, abnormal vital signs. These are the non-reassuring vital signs, and we know when to put it in the ICU, and we know if the cirrhosis, you add octreotide and ceftriaxone, and that's basically summary of a GI bleed. Thank you so much for listening.